You've tuned in to the Beyond Hope podcast, your access to success strategies and more to help you survive and thrive through your loved one's addiction challenges while you move onward and upward with your life. Now, here's your host, Shar Jones.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Shar Jones, and I'm the host of Beyond Hope, and I'm also the mother of an addict. So I understand what it means to love someone who struggles with addiction. It has been a very long journey for me, but I have gotten to a place of hope, beyond hope, which is kind of the ironic twist to the name, that I think really hope is where the healing begins. And on the other side of hope is life and joy and love and all these things that are no longer contingent upon the recovery of our addicts. So what I'm hoping to do with this podcast is bring to you so many people that I respect and admire, experts within the industry of addiction and recovery who have so much valuable information to share with me, with you, with all of us. And in addition, we'll be bringing you some stories of hope and hopefully some laughs, maybe some tears along the way, but it's going to be all good. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to this journey with you.
I wrote a story in that book called The Old Woman in the Cave, and it's basically a story about what was happening to me and what happens to most moms. We start to isolate ourselves, and we wind up focused on one person at the expense of everybody else.
I wanted to share something with you because I bring a lot of experts onto my show who offer various services, and I want you to know that that is for a reason. The people that I'm sharing with you on this show are people that I respect and admire in the industry of recovery, and not just recovery of addiction or substance abuse, but recovery of codependency or depression. You can apply this to anything, any kind of challenge that you are trying to overcome. And the reason I'm bringing all of these folks to you is because it's so hard to navigate through a loved one's addiction, especially when you have no experience. You're going through it for the first time, and one person will tell you to do this, and another person will tell you to do that, and everybody will tell you to go to Al-Anon, go to Al-Anon. Well, I'm here to say that whether it's Al-Anon or it's Katie or Sean or my next guest, Valerie, or myself, I don't care who you go to. My number one goal is to encourage you to reach out for help. It's so hard because there's just shame and guilt and fear attached to addiction. And I'm saying, to hell with all that. It's time for you to reclaim your life. So pick something. If it's Al-Anon, it's free. Al-Anon is free. You can go on the internet right now and pull up Al-Anon in your city, and you'll find a meeting. You'll find a meeting today, likely. Several meetings today in your area. And if not today, tomorrow, you'll find one that works with your schedule. And I just say, go. And you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. But if you feel inclined, the opportunity is there. I think if it's your first meeting, usually they just encourage you to listen. But if I've ever gone to an Al-Anon meeting, there's always been something that's been said that felt like it was just for me. And I usually felt inclined to talk. And there's something very freeing about that, to start sharing your voice. And that's a safe place to do it. My point with all of that is you got to reach out for help. I mean, I am tossing you a lifeline here, and it's for you. I want to reach you and tell you that we got to save your life first. You deserve joy. You deserve compassion for all that you've been through. You have been fighting a very, very difficult fight. And probably most of this you've been doing alone. And I want to help you change that. So whether it's any of my friends that I've brought to you on this show, maybe it's time to start counseling or to see a psychiatrist or a nutritionist. Only you know what you need the most right now. And if you are in a place where you have lost all hope, and if you're considering ending your life, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and let them help you. 1-800-273-8255. If you need to see someone, a counselor, there's no shame in that. I guess my point is, don't wait. Don't wait another moment for this. Don't you want to live? I want you to live, and really live. And I want to help you do that. You can always reach me at shar@beyondhoperadio.com. And just a reminder that you are worth it. You deserve joy. And I want that for you. My next guest, I'm so honored to introduce to you Valerie Silveira. She is an award-winning author. She is a speaker. She's a consultant. And she's a badass. And she calls herself a beast slayer. She's funny, and she has lived through such incredibly devastating circumstances in her life and found her way to hope. And she is sharing her encouragement and her wisdom. And I'm just honored to share her voice with you today. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. And I realize that this subject matter really hits in the heart, and it can be difficult for people to talk about and hear about. And really what I try to do is bring the realness, I guess, I don't even know if that's a word, to all of this. And especially, as the mom of an addict, I think it's important for people to understand that, yes, I am the mom of an addict, but I'm a whole lot more than that. And I think that's what happens is lots of times we get stuck in the shame and the guilt and the labels of our stories. And so I just want to bring, I guess, the mom and the whole woman aspect to this journey. And for me, it's kind of interesting. A lot of us with sons and daughters who live with an addiction beast, that's what I call it. And I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later, why I call it the beast rather than, they're an addict. And those of us who have sons and daughters, it's a very lonely road. A lot of us have sons and daughters who were absolutely brilliant, gifted, popular, and that was my daughter. And I called her Jordan in my first 3 books because out of respect for her story, because I always thought that she would one day tell her story. And I'll tell you in a little bit why I now call her by her name as Jamie. But in any case, Jamie was gifted. Shar, this girl had it all. She was left-brained and right-brained and artistic and athletic and quick-witted at the same time and hilarious and popular. She went to youth group, all of this, and got good grades. And around the age 15, she just started going sideways. And we could not figure out what was going on. And she was so smart that all of our suspicions were met with some crafty thing that she would say. And we had no proof of anything. But, so the smartest person I knew quit school and just, the whole thing started going downhill. When Jamie was 18, she was shot by her ex-boyfriend. And it was considered an abdominal gunshot wound, and it really should have been fatal. And so, I come from Bellevue, Washington, and it's not an area where people are shooting each other per se. So, this whole world was so different from where Jamie grew up and the life that she had, the family she had. She just sort of made her way into this other world. And so, there I am in this emergency hospital going, what in the heck is going on here? This is the worst day of my life. And the miracle of it is that she survived with very little physical damage, considering. But, what's kind of interesting is that one night in the hospital, we were laying there, and she'd become really distant from me. And we were laying there one night in the dark, and she didn't want to talk about anything. And, she had 50 staples holding her gut together. So I understand that she was in pain. She was cut open from her breastbone to her pubic bone. God. And, filleted open like a fish in order to stop the bleeding. And so, she'd been, not pleasant during this hospital stay. And one night we were laying there in the dark trying to sleep, and she said something to me that she'd never said before, never since. She said, "Mommy," it's funny, she always called me Mommy. "Mommy, will you pray with me?" And, that night, I like to tell people I'm not a big out loud prayer, but that night I would have made a Baptist preacher proud, I was just preaching it. And I just kind of had this feeling that everything was going to be okay. This was the thing, the moment, rock bottom, the end. It couldn't get any worse, all of that. Everything would be okay now. She would come back. We would have her life back. Well, I was going to have to put on my seatbelt and strap down my shoulder harness, because my ride on what I call the roller coaster from hell was about to get a lot worse. And so over the next decade, basically her life spun further and further out of control. And the more out of control her life spun, the further I spiraled into darkness. And I'm an outgoing, confident, fun-loving, funny person. And I was basically losing myself. And it was really a ride it was a 13-year ride. And one day I was standing in my kitchen, and I said to my husband, "I don't want to be here anymore. It's just too hard." Because I couldn't save my daughter from herself. I couldn't save her from this addiction beast. And I was devastated. I tried everything. I'm a person that can make things happen. I couldn't make anything happen. And I thought it was my responsibility, because I was her mother. God gave her this gift of my daughter, and I blew it. So I, carried all this shame and guilt, and I felt very alone, because I didn't know at that point, at least I didn't know that I knew anybody who had a son or a daughter who was dealing with this addiction beast. And so when I heard those words come out of my mouth, Shar, it scared me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't suicidal, but that's how I felt. I lived with this dark cloud just hanging over my heart 24 hours a day. And I just kept waiting. I kept waiting for Jamie to get better. And if she could just get better, then I would be okay. Then my life could get back to normal, and everything would just magically disappear that, was wrong. And so, she was in and out of rehabs and things, and I'd have that, hope followed by devastating disappointment and all of this. So around that time, basically, the long story short is that when I heard myself say that, I really started to think about my son. And my son is 2 years younger than Jamie, and just what he had been through, basically kind of losing his only sibling and his first friend. And now he's watching his mom self-destruct. And I just literally thought, no, this is not going to be my legacy. This is not what Sean's going to remember about his mom. So I just made a decision to stand up and fight. I was going to fight for my life. And somehow I would just, get a little bit better. That's really all I wanted in the beginning, was just to get a little bit better. And then I started to get a lot better. And eventually I developed what I call the 9 actions to battle your beast. And they are these actions that really saved my life. And I started implementing them. And so I wrote, my first book is called Still Standing After All the Tears. And the subtitle is Putting Back the Pieces After All Hell Breaks Loose. Mm. And it has turned out to be something that's really been, it's amazing. I hear every day from people that are mainly moms of addicts that are implementing these actions and finding hope. And that's really the key, finding hope that in the middle of the storm, while the storm is still raging, that they can give themselves permission to live again. And so I also wrote a workbook and another book that's called Still Standing 90 Days of Wisdom for Moms of Addicts. And I'm actually working on another book that is called Misery, You Don't Get My Company. This book, I don't know if how much you know about my story, but a year ago, my daughter was murdered. And so, it's the knock on the door that nobody can prepare for. So as strong as I was, and I had the beast at bay, and I had, things going well, every single morning I would pray for a miracle for my daughter, and then I would let her go. And I believed for that miracle. And so when I got that knock on the door, it pretty much knocked me right back down to the mat. But I knew that it also wasn't going to be Jamie's legacy. That the end of Jamie's story was not going to be a girl who was murdered. The end of her story is not going to be an unsolved murder. And the end of her story is not going to be, that she was a junkie, an addict. Because just like me, I'm the mom of an addict, but I'm a whole lot more. And Jamie was a whole lot more too. So now I carry her with me. I feel her with me. Obviously, I have a hole in my heart, and I'm going to live with it for the rest of my life. And I'm aware of that, and I'm okay with it. I can do it. And so I just want to help as many people as I possibly can to stand up and fight to get their lives back, to become women of courage, and basically just to lead the way. We keep telling people, where's your rock bottom? Stand up and fight. Get battle this addiction beast. At the same time, we're self-destructing. So I'm really giving people tools and guidance and hope that they can demonstrate what it looks like to become a woman of courage. So I don't know if that was too much that you wanted at that point, but
no, I just honor your story. And I don't even know if we got to say for you to introduce to give folks your name and
tell your name. Detail. You should have interrupted me. I'm so sorry. My name is Valerie Silveira. I am an award-winning author, a speaker, and what I like to call a beast slayer.
And that is so fitting. And I don't even know how I found you. I just followed my heart, really felt compelled to invite you to share your story. And I'm just so grateful that you are out in the world doing this work and thinking about all those moms who are still stuck in that place of darkness where we were not that long ago. Those are the moms I want to reach. And I just felt so drawn to you to share your voice with them who may not have otherwise been able to find you. So thank you for sharing that. And of course, my heart hurts hearing about your daughter. And I really just would love for you to share a little bit more about her before you dive into the action and the tools and the books. Okay. I would love for you to share a little bit more about. Let's talk a little bit about your daughter.
Mm-hmm. Jamie was a handful. I will have to say. If she were sitting here right now, she'd say, "Listen here, Missy." That's what she was going. Listen. Okay, but she was a good sport about it. But okay, when Jamie was 1, I was reading the book called The Strong-Willed Child.
Okay.
Yeah, when she was 1. She was so quick and so advanced and so smart and brilliant and funny and fun. And, she was a leader. And it's kind of interesting because all of her cousins would tell you that she was the least likely for something like this to happen. That she was who they all looked up to. They wanted to be like. So, Jamie she's just a ray of sunshine. Even her brother kind of put it this way. He said, when Jamie walked into a room, you knew she was there.
What did he mean by that?
That she lit up a room. She wasn't the kind of person who kind of slipped into a room and went, and, after a couple minutes, they went, "Oh, Jamie arrived." You knew she was there. She had a huge smile. She had big eyes. She was also, have you ever heard that your greatest strengths are often your biggest weaknesses?
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, she never judged anybody. She always saw the best in people. She didn't like it when people talked bad about other people. She, but kind of to an extreme is probably why she was able to hang out with people who were in gangs and things that were so far from the life that she knew and how she was raised and really who she was underneath the weight of her beast. I think it was really that ability for her to do that kind of was a dual-edged sword. But what I like to take away from it, because, it's happened, there's nothing we can do. We can't undo what has happened. And I like to try to find what I can in every situation. And I am so grateful that, even Jamie's addiction has really enriched my life. And that might sound weird to say. I'm not saying I would wish that, want that, hope for that. No way. I wish I could undo it all. But because I watched her navigate this difficult world, and everyone was judging her, including me, and she never judged back. And it would have been easy for her to do that. So I just really am grateful that she taught me. I'm a far less judgmental person because of the things that she taught me. And I really see the best in people because of her.
I think that's beautiful. And I understand. I too am the mom of an addict, and I can relate to some of the things that you're saying just about how we've evolved as people going through something like this,
right?
Changing us from the inside out. And just the subtle shifts that change the way we see the world and the people in it. And there's this strong desire and this strong want to help and to uplift and to encourage other moms out there who are going through what we went through. And I feel like I know her, but before we move on, one more thing, what do you wish more people knew about her?
I wish that people knew that, it's like I used to always say to her, Shar, I used to say all the time, even when she was really being controlled by the addiction beast, I used to say, I see you.
Yes.
I know who you are. Mm. And I would tell her, you are not your beast. This is not who you are. Here's the thing. My daughter was murdered. Nobody's been arrested. So, I only know so much from the detectives and what they can tell me. And, obviously it had something to do with drugs. And I'm sure if there's ever a trial, a defense attorney would paint a very poor picture of her because she was in that world and that lifestyle. But I don't want people to think of her in that way. I'm sure that my daughter did illegal things and dishonest things. I'm not stupid here.
Right.
I mean, I like to remember the good in her, but I'm not trying to pretend she was a saint.
Of course.
None of us are. But I want people to know that she really did love people. And what was interesting is that I know this is going to be hard for some people to understand, but I hadn't seen Jamie in a year and a half when she was murdered. Mm-hmm. And I know that some people have a hard time understanding that, and I don't judge, anybody for thinking whatever they do about that. It wasn't that I didn't want to see her or that I didn't want to, I didn't say, get out of my life. It wasn't anything like that. Our communication was so beautiful. The last communication from her, she told me how proud she was of me. So it wasn't that. It was that I had finally decided what my life looked like. And I told her, as much as I want you in it, and I will stand with you every single time you stand up and fight and you choose life. But my life doesn't look like chaos and drama and drug dealers and people who shoot people. We'd already lived through a shooting, Shar, which was, it was unbelievable.
I can't even
For
imagine.
12 years and 12 days, it was unbelievable that my daughter had been shot. And then it happened again.
Shocking.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. And so, we have a right to safety. And we have a right to live our lives in peace and with happiness. And so because she respected us, and I think that's one thing that would be a great thing for people to realize is she respected us enough to stay away.
Yeah.
And I know it was hard on her because she missed us and she loved us. And so she was torn between these two worlds, and she respected us enough to keep the danger away. And I really appreciate that as much as I missed her. But, did I miss her in that condition? No.
Right.
I was already missing her. I missed her for 15 years, So, I guess that would be important for people to know.
I understand.
Thank you for asking about her, because sometimes we just, people are afraid to ask about not just people who die, but even before that. Like you said, you have a child or a son or a daughter with an addiction beast, and people don't know what to say because we're living in constant grief. While she was alive, I grieved.
That is one of the things that I wanted to talk. So many of us are grieving for our children too soon. It's just this natural, like you start grieving. I remember having conversations with my daughter about did she want to be cremated? Did she want to be buried? Like I needed to know.
Wow. Yeah, no, there's a section in Still Standing After All the Tears that I call Nobody's Bringing a Casserole. And
right.
What I was talking about was when somebody dies, and you know what, when Jamie died, people came and they brought casseroles, some of them were in the form of pizzas and salads and things, but you know what I mean? The gift of food, they came to surround us and grieve with us. And when you are the mom or a dad or family member of an addict, and I speak specifically to moms only because I have much more obviously of a perspective, but when you're the mom of an addict, you're grieving all the time.
Yes.
And nobody's bringing a casserole.
Exactly. I've written about that too. That's like, any other disease, and people would be offering to run a 5K or whatever for the cause. And it's
good point. You're right.
And I get it. And it does, I think it does push you into this, deeper into this isolation and this confusion and this darkness. That is why I'm just so encouraged by you, because that's what this podcast is all about, is just finding your way to hope. And then the way I think of it is like on the other side of hope is everything. It's life. It's joy. It's being able to allow happiness to re-enter your life slowly. And it's not all the time. Life is not perfect, but I think just that small shift in perspective can just open up so many new windows, doors, whatever, and just allowing us to live a different life. And I always say it's like, that's no longer contingent upon our addict's recovery. Learning to be joyful that's not dependent on that, because really it's like addiction. It's just this process of getting clean and relapsing and however many times. And so it's just this constant flow of just hope and devastation and fear and panic. And, it's exhausting.
It is absolutely beyond exhausting. And actually, there's another thing that I wrote, I have in Still Standing After All the Tears and the workbook. I wrote this thing called the Hope and Disappointment Grid. And it just kind of gives people some perspective on just what you said. And it's, that we should live above the hope line. We should never live in the disappointment zone. We should always live in hope. But what we do with this addiction thing, this beast, is that we're down in the gutter. And then that something happens like, oh, Mom, I'm going to go into rehab. I'm going to get clean, whatever it is. And then massive hope, unrealistic hope, because we've been so without it for so long. It's this high. So this chart shows this peak, where I'm way up here. And then it's like, oh, she doesn't even show up for the meeting or whatever. And then you're down further than you were before you had the hope. And so it's basically about managing our expectations, not losing hope. I never lost hope. Even, to the day she died. And I can even say now, after my daughter was killed, that I can recommend that nobody ever stop praying or ever lose hope. Just because my prayers weren't answered, I still believe in hope, and I still believe in miracles. And I wanted to say something to you, because a couple things. One is I really like the name that you've chosen for your podcast, because it really does kind of paint a picture for me of there is a place beyond hope, because what moms of addicts are doing is they're grasping at hope. And, just the name that you chose is really powerful.
Thank you.
And then also you mentioned something earlier where you said, we change as people, we become better people. But see, the thing about it is most people aren't. And so what you're doing and what I'm doing, and, really just a handful of people now are starting this movement, is we are demonstrating that it's possible. And that, that you have to do this right in the middle of the storm. And, people will hear from me all the time. I keep saying this. Today is the day to decide to stand up and fight, not tomorrow. And you have to stand up in the middle of the storm.
It's so true. And it's like, I felt this overwhelming sense of urgency to do this podcast even before I was ready, because it was like, I didn't want to wait until my daughter, God forbid, overdosed or something happened to her. Like, it felt so important for me to learn through the process and to start sharing. It's like, even before I felt like I was 100% ready to start sharing my voice.
Yeah, good thing, because if you were going to wait for everything to be perfect,
it would never happen.
That would be never.
Right?
But you know what? You bring up a really good point too, because I think here's what's interesting. After Jamie was killed, I mean, obviously, I was right back down on the mat with my beast on top of me. And he was back whispering in my ear and screaming in my face that I was a terrible mother, that I didn't deserve to be happy, all the stuff that, I had stopped believing. And, I was right back down on that mat. And I said to my husband, because the work that we do, it's exhausting. I'm not saying that I'm not glad that I do it, because I am, and I'm grateful, and it's an honor, but it takes a lot out of you. And so I said to Rich one day, I said, I could just stop all this now. Jamie's gone. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, you're right. You could. He said, but you won't. And, I knew that I would stand up and fight. And what you said is important, because I'm not trying to be the doomsday person that says, stand up and fight now in case they die. That's not what I'm saying.
No.
But here's the fact of the matter. Some of them are going to die.
Mm.
Okay. I wish that wasn't the case, but it's the reality. But here's the other thing too. Some of them are actually going to get clean.
Yeah.
And so no matter what happens in the future, what happens if they get clean and you are a huddled mess in the corner, drooling and rocking back and forth,
right?
Completely devastated. You're just a shell of your former self.
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to be any good to them? And so, the other thing that I mentioned earlier is just, I've really started to think about this. Jamie would have had every right to say to me, while you're giving me all this advice, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing for your own recovery? What are you doing to fight your own beast? See, I put it on her. And here's the other thing too. When we put our happiness, our sense of purpose, our joy, our peace, all of the things that are good about life, when we put that on the shoulders of another human being, it's not fair. And we're putting it on the shoulders of a person who's living with one of the most vicious beasts out there. I'm not saying that they shouldn't stand up and fight and they shouldn't take responsibility for their life. I believe they should, but so should we.
I deny myself, I just felt like I didn't have the right to be happy for the longest time. And now that I've kind of gotten through to the other side, it's like I started to realize that what a disservice that was to her, because just the incredible pressure that would place on her shoulder to be responsible for my joy.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's responsible for your happiness. Well, for one thing. Okay. That's one. The other piece to it is she's not getting the benefit of a guide, a woman of courage that she looks at and says, and that's what happens with my son now. He sent me a text the other day that was, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was, that I feel like God literally just handed me a gift when he gave me you. He told me, I'm so proud of you. And
so beautiful.
He's proud of me for fighting. And that's the other thing I mentioned earlier, that Jamie, in the last communication I had with her, it was actually an email, but she told me, that I'm so proud of you. I tell everybody about you. I'm the luckiest girl in the whole world to have a mom that will stand up and stand next to me, and, all sorts of things. And so this is what the message that I like to give to moms. In all those years that I was crying in my walk-in closet, all the years that I was trying to guilt trip her, all the years that I was yelling and screaming, all the years that I was, not enjoying my life, not one single time did she ever tell me she was proud of me.
I get a lot of questions from moms in various stages of their loved one's addiction, wanting to know, how do you start putting the pieces of your life back together after addiction or substance abuse or depression enters your life? And that is such a great question. And I guess I would just ask you, have you arrived at a place in your life where nothing seems to be working? Are things starting to crumble around you? Are your relationships suffering? Are you thriving in your career? How's your health? Are you taking care of yourself? Do you have the energy that you need to do the things that you want to do? Or are you spending most of your time alone and withdrawn? Maybe your friends are trying to get you out of the house and trying to remind you what it feels like to live again, but you would prefer to stay home and replay those memories over and over and over again in your head, the way things used to be before addiction entered your life. Some might call this rock bottom. For me, I think the most important first step is the decision that you want to live a different life. And I just think that it's ironic that that is the same starting point for our addicts. If you've gotten to a place where you're ready to reclaim your life and you want someone to walk along the side of you who understands what you're going through, someone who wants to help you manifest significant and lasting change to better your life, not only do I host this show, but I also do individual coaching and mentoring. And I would love to work with you and help you reclaim your life. If you're interested, you can visit my website at beyondhoperadio.com to set up your first free Life Beyond Hope session. If this interests you, as a nationally certified addictions recovery coach, I'm confident that together we can help you reclaim your life and allow joy to re-enter your heart and to learn to live again. And to have this not be contingent upon your loved one's addiction. And I know that seems impossible, but you can get there, and I would love to help you. It's interesting because I've only recently started to realize there's so many parallels between my daughter's journey and mine as her mom. And I'm really looking forward to diving into that deeper in future episodes. Thank you for listening. And please, you can always reach out to me via email at shar@beyondhoperadio.com. And I just send you so much love on this journey. I know it's difficult, but you have been chosen. Let's discover your purpose together. I'll talk to you soon.
I think what we represent, and I'm so, I really am so humbled and so honored to stand with people and show them that there is hope, show them that I've used these actions and I've done this work while I was at my lowest point in my life. Mm-hmm. And had I not done the work, had I not become the person that I've become, I'm a way better person, by the way, Shar, you mentioned this earlier. I'm a way better person than I was before all hell broke loose, because I've decided to just learn and grow from all of this. But if I hadn't have stood up to fight and got my life back, when that knock on the door came, I don't even want to think about where I'd be right now.
Blessing that you started that work. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes time, and it's I think it's repetitive decision making, like daily.
Oh, yes, of course. I always say this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is a lifelong battle. But here's the thing: when you work on battling your beast, as I call it, when you work on changing, battling this big thing that's got you down, what's incredible is all of the tools and actions and things you do to take down this big thing that's got you down. It also positively impacts every other area of your life.
Right.
So all of your relationships have an opportunity to become better and, grow and change as a person. And really, should I just mention my actions really quickly, because maybe they'll it'll make sense?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
So the 9 actions to battle your beast, and I feel like you and I could probably talk for about 6 hours. So action number 1 is decide to stand up and fight. And these 9 actions, I created them like a puzzle because they all work together. They're not steps where you do this and then you do that. They're constant things, as you said a moment ago. And decide to stand up and fight. I purposely put that as action number 1 because if you first don't make a decision, you're not going to do anything. So, everything we do starts with a thought. And so it's about making a decision. So you initially make a decision. I'm going to stand up and fight and get my life back. But you make a decision that you're going to fight as long as it takes and no matter what it takes. And that every single time you get knocked down, you're going to get back up. And so it's what you said earlier. They are decisions you make every single day, constantly. I still have to make decisions because my beast still comes at me. Mm-hmm. Action number 2 is to get on your spiritual armor. And for me personally, if I didn't have my spiritual armor on, and I was not a super religious type person, but if I didn't have God, if I didn't walk this road with him, and we would not be even having this conversation, because I am a firm believer that this battle is as much a spiritual battle as anything else. Mm-hmm. And it's way bigger than me, but it's not way bigger than God. Mm-hmm. And so the spiritual armor part of it is really critical. Whatever, people don't have to have the same beliefs as I do, but whatever that spiritual armor looks like, get it on and don't take it off. Mm-hmm. And then action number 3 is to put on your oxygen mask. Mm-hmm. And this is where we give ourselves permission. We give ourselves permission to be happy again. Mm-hmm. And start taking care of ourselves, which we don't do. And so it's all about, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, of course. But then action number 4 is to build your circle of strength. And, I didn't really do that before. I didn't have the right relationships. And sometimes we have unrealistic expectations. Say a family member. Well, it's my sister and she doesn't ever ask about anything. And, I'm so disappointed by her. Well, maybe your sister's living with her own beast. Mm-hmm. She doesn't understand what you're going through. So action number 4 is all about managing our relationships and our expectations and getting the right people around us. And then action number 5, which is right in the center, and I didn't plan it that way, but it turned out really cool because I call it your battle changer, and that is to change your attitude. And that can be daily. Sometimes it can be every hour, sometimes every 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Because our attitude is it's a series of habits we've formed. And so it's going to take a while to break that. But changing your attitude is really interesting. I have found that when I change my attitude, Shar, the situation around me might not change at all, yet everything changes.
Yeah.
And then action number 6 is to adjust your focus. And this is a big one because I can remember, maybe you can identify with this, but I remember when, all hell broke loose and I was really riding that roller coaster from hell, and I felt so devastated by everything. And I would get on social media and it seemed like everybody else had a perfect life. And so in action number 6, I issue this warning. It says, lives lived out on social media may appear better than they really are. But that's what it seems like. Everybody else's daughter, mothers and daughters were graduating from high school and going to graduations and college and marriages and babies and boyfriends and jobs and careers. And I didn't even know where my daughter was half the time. Yeah. And so action number 6, the focus thing, is where we end up. I wrote a story in that book called The Old Woman in the Cave. And it's basically a story about what was happening to me and what happens to most moms. We start to isolate ourselves and we wind up focused on one person at the expense of everybody else. So that's action number 6. Number 7 is probably the hardest one for moms of addicts, and it is to stop being a control freak. And that is where we're wearing that supermom cape and we're trying to battle somebody else's beast for them. And, this is tough for moms. We still think they're 3 months old in our arms and we're supposed to be able to protect them and save them. And it's a very difficult place to come to when a parent has to realize that we are powerless to save them. It doesn't mean we lose hope or we don't support them, but we are not powerless. I mean, we are powerless to battle another person's beast, to live another person's life. And if we could have saved them from their beast, we would have done it a long time ago. So that's action number 7. Number 8 is to stand on your story. And this one is about getting rid of the shame and the guilt. We forgive ourselves in action number 7 too, but this is about standing up on our stories and not being afraid to say, oh, you have a daughter? What does she do? Well, she shoots heroin. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't have to rent a billboard, but this is our life and we have to quit hiding from it and hiding in the shadows and hiding in the shame. And I really have a strong mission call that we really need to get out into the world and get the no shame message out there.
Absolutely.
Because this shame is covering us like a second skin. So there's that. And then action number 9 is exactly what you are doing with your podcast and with your heart. And that is to make meaning from the madness. That's when you get outside of your story and you make meaning. And it's not, in spite of what happened, you're doing it because of what happened. So whatever it is, people need to get outside of their story and find some purpose in this life. And I think what happens when we get down on that mat and we've had that beast whispering in our ear so long that we're, terrible parents and we don't deserve to be happy. And what kind of a mother would allow this to happen? All the crap that you get, thrown at you, your own self-talk and from your beast, we lose our purpose for life. And that one actually scares me more than anything else. That I would get to heaven one day and God would go, wow, you missed the boat. I gave you all these gifts and talents and opportunities and doorway, and you just stayed in the cave.
That's so good. It's so good. And I just am so thankful that you were driven to pull these steps together in such a beautiful way. The writings, because our moms need this.
Yes.
Our moms need this.
That's why we need to link arms. We do. We have to stand together. Here's the thing. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's so darn true that, one person can make a difference. There's no question. Everybody should stand up and make a difference. But there's this, the synergy. And when you and I stand together, it's not 1 + 1. It's multiplication starts to take place. And so the more people that stand together, the ripple effect is incredible.
It really is. I am so incredibly proud of you. I know that I hope that doesn't sound silly, but just from
thank you.
From one mom to another, just know that I'm just incredibly blessed to have you here with me and just to know that you're out in the world. And thank you for all of the gifts that you're giving and for sharing your time with me. And would you mind just taking a few moments just to, again, reiterate how people can find you and where can they pick up your book and read more about your action steps and all that good stuff?
Okay. Yes. All of my books can be found on Amazon, other online bookstores, but Amazon, of course, is the biggie. And Still Standing After All the Tears. If you type that in, you'll find all of my books, or my name, Valerie Silveira. I do have kind of a different spelling. My first name is Valerie. I have way too many E's and I's in my name because my last name is Silveira. So my website is valeriesilveira.com. And on my website, I have an inspirational email that goes out at least once a week. I send out an email, and people should get on that list because I hear back all the time from people that really appreciate those emails. And I've got, like I said, another book. You can actually even pre-order the book called Misery, You Don't Get My Company. And also, we have just started doing live events. And we did our first Still Standing live event in Seattle. Next one will be in January in Phoenix. And then we are going to go to Philadelphia in April. And we're just really, there's just something about being together in person, which is why I'm willing to traipse across the country. And I don't even, hardly know a soul on the East Coast, but I really felt, like you said, you felt drawn to, for whatever reason, to contact me. I feel really drawn to go to the Northeast. Mm-hmm. So that is going on. I'm actually going to start a podcast too. So I will love to have you as a guest.
Thank you. Congratulations. Yes, absolutely.
So I've got my books, and also we're just in the process of getting together some programs with video that'll help people to do. A lot of people use my workbook. I hear from churches and recovery groups and things like that all the time that people are using the materials for support groups. But we're going to actually formalize that and have, more of a guidance system for people. And then really, truthfully, my most powerful tool that I offer is called the Still Standing Sisterhood. And it's a membership platform. And it is just videos and audios and video conferences and a private Facebook group. And essentially, it's my way of guiding and supporting a lot of people at the same time. And we're just actually getting ready to kind of increase the price and do a big launch and everything. So it'd actually be a great time for people to join the sisterhood. But in any case, it's really amazing tools and support, but also it's that linking of arms with other like-minded. So here's the thing about the sisterhood. We've got all these different women. I mean, I'm talking about some serious stories. I look at my story and think, this daughter and she was murdered and it's horrific. And then I've got this woman in there who's lost 3 husbands and all 4 of her kids are addicts and 2 are in prison. And there are some incredibly strong women out there. And so you see what I mean? Everybody's story is different, but everybody's like-minded. They're all saying, yes, I want to become a woman of courage. I want to make a difference. I want to stop living with that dark cloud over my heart every day. So anyway, that's more of a working with me on a more, not one-to-one, but I guess the next best thing is the Still Standing Sisterhood. So you can find out all that stuff at valeriesilveira.com.
Thank you so much. And I will drop all the links below and I'll share more information with our listeners, how they can find you.
Okay. Again, you're great, Charlene. You're such a blessing. I'm so thankful that you contacted me. And I just have this feeling that you and I are going to know each other for a long time.
I hope so. And I look forward to finding you at your next event and just keep doing all the good things that you're doing. And again, just thank you for spending time with me tonight. I just really appreciate it.
It's my honor. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and for helping me to connect with other moms of addicts or loved ones who are struggling with addiction in their lives. If you have questions for me, comments, suggestions on future show content, or perhaps there's a specific topic that you would like to hear from an expert in the field, I would love to hear from you. I am also interested in sharing your voice. So if you have messages of hope or personal stories that you think would resonate with our listeners, please send me an email. You can type me out a message or you can include an attachment to an audio clip with your voice. You can send that to shar@beyondhoperadio.com. And with that, thank you again, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Beyond Hope. For show notes and more, head on over to beyondhoperadio.com.
A huge thank you to recoveryinnovators.com and James Healy. Thank you so much for putting up with me and for helping me to produce and launch the show. I couldn't have done it without you. You're so awesome. And to anybody else who has been considering working with James, highly recommend him. Please go over to his website and check it out, recoveryinnovators.com.